Hello, good evening, and welcome to Steam Paper and another interview in this series, building up to Steampunk Over Ether, which is happening on the 25th and 26th of April. It's our virtual steampunk festival, and the idea is for people to contribute all sorts of things, performances, and so on. So we can have a virtual steampunk festival, a festival online, even though we can't have one in physical format. And we've had some really good response so far. Had some great videos from people like performers and writers and musicians and all sorts. And what I really like is some videos from people who are making things, making gadgets, making costumes, that sort of thing, just to add to the flavour of the festival. So it'd be nice if it was kind of like a real festival where you wander around, you see all sorts of weird different sites and so on. We've had some people send in some videos of the gadgets they've made, which are awesome. So if any of you would like to make videos about the costumes you're working on or the things you're doing, that has a steampunk flavour, that would be wonderful. And of course, we're still open to lots and lots of videos from performers and so on. It's a chance to get seen and get known once again and to entertain the public. Well, speaking of entertaining the public and performers and so on, I'm very excited and happy and wonderfully pleased to have the amazing Mr. B, the gentleman rhymer, with us. So I'm going to stop waffling on and say hello. Hello, Mr. B. How are you? I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. I wanted to get the most important questions out of the way first. So, how is your personal grooming, your facial hair, getting on in this situation, these circumstances? Yes.
I wake up in the morning, there it is, all ready curled and raring to go.
I've just realised I had the wrong button pressed then, which is not very good considering, and we missed most of that. So I could hear
Oh,
you,
well,
but the public
not to
couldn't.
worry.
Yes,
I
very
was
sorry
just
about that.
saying that, generally speaking, apart from the Grizzly Adams beard,
Your
things,
facial
yeah,
hair is bearing up under the strain.
it is bearing up under the screen.
Good.
And that's the thing, I've not really chopped the moustache either, so I think the moustache is going slightly wild.
Yes.
But yeah, certainly getting long. It's getting to that stage when, while I'm asleep, it's poking me in the eye. So I think you always know it's maybe getting a little bit lengthy, or it needs to be ranged somehow
I
when it
always
pokes you in the eye while you sleep.
I always find when it interferes with my food, that's when I notice because mine doesn't do anything. I mean, mine just sits there, loosely and doesn't do anything. I've learned a long time ago it's a sentient being from another planet that just happens to live on my face, and
Well, there's
both
nothing wrong with sitting there loosely. That's what we're
no,
all doing, I hope, at the moment.
but it never it always it kind of when it gets too long it just gets in my mouth and I hate that, so I have to trim it off. That's the point. But
Well, I do tend to trim the middle bit, you see.
yes,
Just I
yeah,
trim that, otherwise it becomes the
yeah,
overly lifestyle moustache
yeah.
can be tricky.
We got a comment here saying, "Can Mr. B read us too?" Yes, he can. Yes, I can pass on your comments and questions. So if you've got any comments, questions for Mr. B, then we'll happily take them and we'll ask
Hello.
him. So I was going to start off, excuse me, with a few questions. And really, I was kind of wanting to first of all delve into a little bit of history and ask you now. Many years ago, you were fronting a band called Collapse Lung.
I
And
was many years ago,
and
as
just
you
to
say.
embarrass you, I found this image. So that was you. Hard to believe.
Well, I will neither well, confirm nor deny that, but I don't know who that man is.
Well, I must admit, I remember once wearing a parka. So we all did it. We all did
We all went there.
it. So what I wanted to know was how did you get from that to chap hop? What was the kind of progression?
Well, it was many, it was many. There were many progressions along the way. There were going from that. I don't. We after Collapsed Lung, because we had one, what we might call a minor hit single, and then we released a single after that, which was the lowest selling single we'd ever had, even from when we were, selling nothing. So that seemed to be, and we would turn up at gigs, and it would say, Eat My Goal in huge letters and Collapse Lung in tiny letters, and people would you could see the crowd waiting around to hear the hit single, and then we had to spend we didn't want to do it right at the end, so we did it towards the end. But then it meant the last sort of quarter of the gig was a struggle to make sure people stayed in the room. Didn't go, right, seen it now, I'm off. And we was having to shout, get back here. But so we kind of realised that we had been slightly defeated, and the song was bigger than the band. So we moved on. We did another little band called Junior Blanks after that, with most of the same members.
Mm-hmm.
And
is there any recordings from that period available?
I'm not entirely sure if they're available, but we made 2 albums.
Oh, right, okay.
We did 2 albums, and John Peel played a few things from them. So we were kind of getting there-ish, but it just never quite took off.
Yeah.
It became more. It was a bit more tuneful, I suppose, than the Collapse Lung stuff. We had originally intended to be our remit was breakbeat ELO. So it was lots of beats with. I started enjoying the sort of 3-part vocal harmonies, which I enjoy as Mr. B now and utilise quite regularly.
Yeah.
So there was various things in between that. I recorded under the name of Sergeant Rock.
Yeah.
And I joined. I was in a band called Button Up for a while, which was me and a chap from Belfast, and we ended up. It was another hip hoppy thing, but we had an album out in Japan, and so we went and toured in Japan, and then we came back from there. This was about 15, 16 years ago, and just sort of didn't do anything else ever again because we'd sort of been to Japan. So we thought that was nice. We've been to Japan. It was great fun. That's us.
Now, I came across a phrase called dandy punk. So tell us what dandy punk is because actually there is. When I looked it up on the internet, all I could find was a YouTube video of some strange young people. So I wasn't sure what that was about. So do tell us what dandy punk was back then.
Young people at that time. It was one. I was actually in Collapse Lung as well. We had my old band from way back called Skank Thing. We had another band called the Schooner Boys, which, to be honest, the term dandy punk itself has been sort of somewhat disputed within the members of the Schooner Boys themselves. But it was something I used afterwards, after we'd stopped doing things. But yes, it was. Really, it's partly inspired Mr. B, really, because we would sing songs. The thing is, I didn't write these. They were written by a chap called Paul, who was very, very talented, and we had songs called Home to Mothers, Decanter Riot, that was a good one. One called The Camp Gene.
So Schooner Boys would have been reference to Sherry.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, as in Sherry Schooner Boy. Yes, so we were kind of it was sort of Clockwork Orange meets Noel Coward meets The Clash.
Well, I can't see anything wrong with that, frankly.
Oh, absolutely. This thing we did a sort of couple of albums really as well. I think. Yeah. Trying to think if you can actually get them anywhere. I think there may well be a Schooner Boys Bandcamp page. I'll have to look for that. But if you look for Schooner Boys,
okay. Well, if you find it, I'll pop it in the comments afterwards.
Yes, we'll have a look.
So we've got a question from Kat Scott. So when did Chap Hop actually start, and were you the beginning?
Well, okay. This is obviously this has been disputed, but all I will say is that I invented the term Chap Hop.
Right.
So whether or not myself or the good professor were doing similar things in the same town, completely, I have to say, absolutely, this is true, completely unaware of each other for about a year and a half doing all this nonsense we were doing. But I did invent the term Chap Hop. Yeah. I will say that. I'll lay claim to that, but anything else, anyone can still carry on disputing what they like because it's fun.
Yeah, that leads me on to a question Malika's asked, actually, which is, where did the rivalry with yourself and the professor start?
It was, to be honest with Andy, it was his beef. Nothing to do with me. I was just nodding along. He got a bit upset. No, I think it was. What was it? It was. I was in Camden, and I was talking to our friend Jimmy from the Bobby McGee's. Hello, Jimmy. He's living in Vietnam now.
Okay.
And he told me about the prof. He said, "Have you seen Professor Elemental?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Really?" I said, "No." And then he said, "Oh," he pointed me in the direction of the Cup of Brown Joy video, and I saw that and thought, "Oh no." and then I saw how many views it had, and I thought, "Ow, gosh, because obviously it was doing quite well.
Yeah, yeah.
So we ended up, we did catch up. I think we first met at the Public Enemy gig in Brixton Academy in about whatever 2007, 8, no, 2008 perhaps.
Yeah.
And then we didn't see each other for a while, and I think obviously we were both aware of each other then. And I think the Prof was doing, some gigs here and there, and a lot of people going, I think there was people in the Brighton hip hop community were in his ear going, what about this guy? What's he doing? And so, but I think really what it boiled down to was he'd always wanted to do a proper diss track, and no one had turned up before to whom he could do it.
Yes, to whom he could address it.
And he did phone me up before, or sent me an email before saying, I had seen a live version of it. But then he sent me a message saying, look, I'm just letting you know that I've done this, just so that you know. I was like, okay, fine. But, in the end, it's done neither of us any harm.
Diss, then?
What's that?
It's awfully polite diss, then.
Oh, very polite diss. I mean, it couldn't be any other way, really.
Yes, yeah.
It's like old World War I pilots. They're still, going, Jerry's rather good, isn't he? Oh, I like that move. That was very good. So, yes, it's...
So is there some kind of mutual admiration going on? Do you think there?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we're no doubt we're both brilliant. There's no doubt about that.
I like it.
But no, we are. We had a really good. We played a show. I can't remember what it was. I think it was at the Leicester Space Centre. Actually.
Yeah. Yes.
We did that, and we ended up going back to the hotel and sat in the bar and got very drunk together and had a real long. Because we don't get a chance to catch up very often. And usually when we do, it's in a professional capacity. So we're gigging somewhere. So we've got to do this and do that and go to the stage and do this. But so it was nice to sit down in a hotel bar with a couple of old blokes wearing football shirts and near them. That wasn't us. And just have a good old chinwag. And, I think apparently he said he saw Collapsed Lung play when he was at university. And it was one of the things that made him think, I could do this. Probably because he saw me and thought, if he could do it.
Yeah, if he could do it, anyone can. It was nice, actually. I really enjoyed that gig. I happened to introduce it as the Cheesemeister in my bright yellow suit. I really enjoyed that gig, and partly because Tom Wild was there as well, who I'm a big fan of. And just getting the three of you all on stage together together at the end. Yeah,
it was together.
It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Now,
that was great fun.
All three of you actually are kind of that great tradition of humour in music, that great British tradition of humour in music. I'm a massive fan, going back from Neil Innes, rest his soul, onwards. So I was going to ask you who your influences were and who do you like, who does musical humour.
Well, I mean, there's all sorts. I mean, this is the thing. I'm also fascinated with music and humour, but almost in a way that it's critically received, which is usually not well. It usually seems to be if you're doing music, and it's funny, people seem to just dismiss it and think that the only worth of it is either the funny bit or the music bit. And they can't seem to grasp the fact that it's a lot harder to be funny than it is to be miserable.
Yeah.
It's easy to write songs that are all like, oh, she doesn't love me and oh, isn't the world bleak? But to write things with humour, I think it's more tricky. But I would say that.
Yeah.
Anywho, but I know to someone who I'm a particular fan of, who I was actually only introduced to a little while after I started doing Mr. B, and that's Mr. Ronald Frankow.
Oh, right.
Who was an old music hall performer. And he did a few films. There was on YouTube, there was an amazing video of him from an old film from like 35 or something called Let's Go Wild. But it seems to have disappeared from YouTube. But he's, if anyone doesn't know Ronald Frankow, I would highly recommend going and finding his stuff because it's brilliant.
That would be me, for starters.
Oh, right.
I'll go and sort that out, because like I say, I'm a huge fan of musical humour, and that's not a name I'll come across, so we'll definitely...
Oh, yeah, well, no, it's just, I think, and apparently he's, I think it's Jesse Armstrong, who co-wrote Peep Show and things like that. I think it's his grandfather, apparently.
Wow. Okay. So he runs in
the family. Definitely a tradition there.
Yeah.
But no, his stuff's just fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, there's all sorts of things like, they have a much better time when they're naughty. And he's a twerp. That's a particular favourite of mine. I'm sorry to inform you, he's a twerp.
Yeah,
and often his songs will just stop halfway through, and then he'll go off on a little monologue for a couple of minutes, and then go back to the the final chorus.
Very,
But
very
he's just fantastic.
cool. Yeah, that reminds me a little
So
bit.
he's good, and obviously it's people like Tom Lehrer,
Yeah,
who are magic, and but also there's a band called the Upper Crust, who I really love,
right.
who do, or is it the High and Mighty? Yeah, the Upper Crust. They had an album called High and Mighty, and they are a sort of, I think they're like Belgian or something like that. I'm not sure. They may be just pretending to be, but they dress as sort of Renaissance dandies with huge wigs and white powder puff faces. But they're a kind of hair metal band, or they got songs called Rock and Roll Butler, and was it Let Them Eat Rock? Was a particularly good one. Let them eat a rock.
We're getting
So they're very good. There's a couple of little hidden gems.
Oh well, yeah, I definitely chased those up. I've been making notes while I've been off camera. So I've got a couple of questions here that, in fact, they're coming in thick and fast now. So one I wanted to, where are we? Oh yeah, somebody was asking. I'm going to take this one because it appeals to me. Did that guy ever score in the basketball court? Now you did a video in your you did a diary, didn't you? And there was a guy.
I did.
So did he ever score?
Do you know what? The very bit towards the end of that video,
Yes.
I think I may have. I wrote a thing called "B misses the score" over the top, but it turns out I actually wrote that little bit over the top of him. Actually, at that moment, one of them went in. At that very moment, I was saying, "Come on!" When I was on the way back, yes, he actually got the basket. I looked back at the video. I was like, "Oh my word, he actually got it then." So yes, they did. Well done. First time ever.
So a couple of questions about your past. Did one here we are? Let's bring this up on screen. Did one specific historical figure inspire your stage persona?
Well, I think if you listen to the early albums, which have just been released on Bandcamp, re-released, the lost first two albums, I Say and Flattery Not Included, I very, very much sound more like Noel Coward.
Right.
There's definitely more of a Noel Coward thing going on there. But I mean, I couldn't say that I'd based it on any one particular person. There's bits of George Formby in there, and there's bits of Noel Coward and bits of Grandmaster Flash and Chuck D. So
yeah,
there's all sorts.
Yeah, I've just put up Mr. B's Bandcamp address there.
Lovely.
As you mentioned it, it's always a good point to do these things. Another question, actually from Nimrod. I'll just move that up, otherwise you won't see it. What does the B stand for? That's a very good question. Yeah.
Well, I mean, my surname does start with B. That's the sad, answer to it. But
you're going to have to make up something exciting for interviews now.
Exactly. Yes. Otherwise, just use your imagination. It could be anything. It could be.
Okay.
It could be. Yes. It's the Superman name rather than the Clark Kent name, so it's could be anything. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't know about that. Having two names, I wouldn't know about that.
No.
So here's another. It's a really good one, actually. If you could collaborate with any other artists, who would it be, and what new genre would that collaboration invent? I quite like that question. So who would you want to collaborate with, and
who would I want to collaborate with? I'm a bit of a lone wolf, really. This is the thing. I had a meeting earlier on about doing some other Mr. B related things which involved other people, and I'd just get very antsy about it. But just the thing. Well, I mean, it would have been lovely I was very lucky to do a show a few years ago celebrating the life of Vivian Stanshall, and I ended up on the stage with Neil Innes and Rick Wakeman were playing the piano, and I was playing the banjolele, and a few other people, and there's members of the Bonzos there as well. Rodney Slater was playing, and a few of the others, and Sam Spoons I think was there as well. So I think a Bonzos one would have been lovely.
Yeah, I think I'm going entirely green now, completely green.
Yes, well, it was. You know
Love
what I did. It was I performed the song "About of Sobriety" from Viv's album. Was it Men Opening Umbrellas Ahead?
Yeah.
And I arrived at this theatre in where was it? In the West End, kind of, and literally I was just ushered onto the stage. They go and do a little rehearsal, and the whole they're all there, ready to play. And I have to admit that I choked during rehearsal completely and had to start again because I was just too slightly awestruck by the whole thing that was happening. I said, I'm terribly sorry. Can we start it again? I just sort of, yes, I completely choked.
I quite liked your collaboration with that Umpar band. Was it?
Yes.
Is it She's a Model, or was it? That was the. I can't remember the name.
That's right. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, that was a while, but yes, that was. God, where was that?
That was really good. I enjoyed that.
Well, thank you.
So I was going to ask you also. Now this is. See, I always used to like Michael Parkinson's interviews. When he used to say, he used to sit there and he used to say, I read somewhere that when you know full well he had a team of researchers behind him who researched all these questions. But I did read somewhere about you. I've got to quote. I'm going to quote this back at you now.
Okay. Oh dear.
You said that's the thing with various themes like steampunk as well. I tend to like to skirt around scenes and never actually get fully involved. It's a surefire way to get squashed creatively, to have a sound that is supposed to sound a certain way. And I was going to say this led me to two things really. One, I think make a general observation about steampunk. Well, the great thing about steampunk music is it doesn't really have a category, which is
that is absolutely true. Yes.
And secondly, how did you
can't do anything?
How did you get involved with steampunk?
I'm trying to remember, to be honest. I think it was just a logical thing to happen. I'm trying to think of the first steampunk thing I may have done. I'm sure I'm going to be completely dissing someone here by completely forgetting what the first thing I did was. Perhaps it may have been one of the asylums a few years ago, I guess. The first asylum I did was probably 11 years ago. So perhaps it was one of those.
Yeah.
But I guess it was just a natural progression from, steampunk tends to search out and find these interesting people that, are doing something with a mild, with all these elements that go towards making it as a whole. And I guess it was just a natural progression. As what happens with a lot of time with things I do, someone asked me to do something and I did it. And then I realised, this is rather good. I should do more of these.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kind of parallels. It's, it's all about the dressing up and looking, but it's also about kind of the humour and the fun. And I think there's definitely a lot of crossover.
Absolutely. It's certainly, it's a perfect fit.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing, I think, that was almost more historical when I was saying about fitting into genres, because it was when I was doing the things under the name of Sergeant Rock a while, which is the turn of the century.
Yeah.
It was sort of quirky, sort of almost big. It was that sort of big beat era. But then all those sounds tended to become more what we might call breakbeat, which became almost like a mathematical formula. Everything had to kind of go. And if it didn't sound like that, people were like, I'm not sure about this. Whereas I think that's why I'm always conscious of getting involved in what you might call a scene.
Yeah.
Whereas, obviously steampunk it's a different thing from a musical genre because it's an entire, I wouldn't even say lifestyle. It's just a all-encompassing ideal in a way.
Yes, it's very hard. It's always very hard to define.
Yes.
We're always saying
steampunk.
If you ask,
yes.
If you ask 3 steampunks, you'll get 5 different answers.
Yes.
I'm just posting up some of these comments. Ian Hannigan, as a coincidence, the barber I seldom use is Mr. B's, just down the road. Just down the road.
There you go. I do get around.
Yes.
I'm a man of many skills. I'm a polymath.
Another thing, maybe the B is for Banjolele. Could be.
It could be.
Yes, Mr. Banjolele.
If that's how you want it to be, that's how we'll do it.
And Helena, the lady that asked about the collaborating, said, would you collaborate with the Major? Now, the Major, for anybody who doesn't know, is another of your personalities. So tell us a little bit about the Major and whether Mr. B and the Major could coexist in the same universe.
Well, I think they do. I mean, I think on was it on a Mixcloud or something? I did do a mix which featured the Major's music with some Mr. B vocals on it. The Major's more, it's what I might call Chappist electronica. It's lots of slightly hip-hoppy wonky hip-hoppy beats with funny sounds, and it's quite tuneful as well. But it's mainly sort of electronic. But they're also, I do, as I tend to, use a lot of old samples from old music hall songs or old ballads from the 20s and 30s, and also lots of 70s sitcom things as well.
Yeah.
I'd have a long-standing Reginald Perrin obsession. So there's lots of there's a few Reggie Perrin references in there.
Yes.
So, and actually, the last live show I did before all this madness was actually a major gig, which was in a little hotel in Weston-super-Mare, which was very good fun. But people were already a bit antsy and a bit sort of, it was a little bit peculiar.
Yeah. Just looking. Oh yes.
Yes, Helena. I know Helena. She makes cakes for all of the major and for Mr. B and all sorts of things.
Oh, cool.
She's splendid. And she actually got me. Well, so people who I'd like to collaborate with. It was actually Helena was indeed slightly instrumental in getting me onto. I did a little tour with Sparks a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, you did. Yes. Tell us about that. What was that like?
Well, that was amazing. It was great. It was just really. I think Helena got in touch with me and she tweeted me and said, you should support Sparks. And I thought, oh, this lady thinks I should support Sparks. So I thought, yeah, of course I should. And then she arrived at a gig and said, oh, no, I sort of know them a little bit and they're actively looking for people to support them. And they know of you, apparently. So I got in touch. She gave me an email address. I got in touch. And the next thing I knew, I was on stage in Leeds about to play and what have you, which was great. And so I did Leeds and I played in London, and that went so well that their manager said, "Oh, we're off to Europe next week. Do you fancy coming along as well?"
And you said,
"So."
No,
I only did about 3 gigs with them in Europe, which was rather sad because I had to come back to play a gig in Peterborough that I ended up not getting paid for. So that was fun. That was a nice reason to not do a gig in Amsterdam with Sparks. I was very pleased about that. But yes, they were lovely. Yeah, lovely chaps. Very quiet and shy. But really, really nice, and it was a lot of fun.
Cool. I mean, I can't imagine it wouldn't be with that band.
Yes.
A few people watching now. That we've got Greg McNeil who took that wonderful picture of you, which it's one of my favourite pictures he's taken. It's a very splendid picture of you. I remember. I think he took it at again at the National Space Centre and just took it in a very quick space of time.
Yes.
Colin Matheson. The comic book producer has said, "Are you a comic fan?" Because of the reference to Sergeant Rock.
Yes. Well, actually, to be honest, the Sergeant Rock reference is part comic and part XTC.
Yes.
Also a big fan of XTC, the band.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Sergeant Rock.
When I looked for videos and stuff, all I got was Sergeant Rock by XTC. Sergeant Rock.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And there are a couple of old Sergeant Rock videos somewhere on a DV tape or something like that I will try and find at some point in my life. But I'm very much a comics fan. But I also, as it tends to be with me, rather than necessarily being a huge comics nerd, I'm what I have in the past, which I made release a compendium of them, but I did have my own comic for a while, which I sold.
Wow.
In Forbidden Planet and what have you, and Davis Comics in Brighton, which was called Grok Comic. Again, a Reggie Perrin reference. Yes, I had. There were various strips in there. I had it was almost I did a travel diary, but I did it under a character called Ennui's cat, who was this slightly sort of bored feline, sort of anthropomorphic feline creature, who was just sort of fed up with everything, and it's basically all the rubbish bits of travelling around Europe. Like going to see Barcelona play football, but then just being obsessed with the guy sat next to you who keeps scratching himself, that kind of thing. And there was also I would often I'd record conversations I'd had with friends in the pub, and then almost word for word transcribe them. There's one friend of mine, Gavin, that I used to go to the pub with quite a lot. But I transcribed them and then had them as Immanuel Kant and Friedrich Nietzsche sat in the pub would have these conversations that me and my friend would have about, what's the best, what's the only place you can safely wave at people, and it's from boats, or then go into things like toilet habits and slightly unsavoury. But there you go. So I may try and re-release a little compendium of those at some point.
Well, that sounds awesome, I have to say. Paul Wicks is asking, have you met any of the subjects of your songs, such as Westwood?
No, I've never met Westwood. No, I'm kind of surprised at in a way, because I've met lots of people he knows. And I'm kind of sure they must have played it to him, but maybe he's just ignoring it. But apparently, well, this is quite a long time ago, you can tell, because I met someone who, I think it was, I did something with Scott Mills on Radio 1, and he was talking about Westwood, and he said he's a really, really lovely man. And there's two things he told me about them. He's obsessed with Desperate Housewives, the TV show,
yeah.
or he was.
Yeah.
And if he comes to your house for dinner, he insists on doing the washing up.
Oh.
That's what I know about Westwood.
Cool.
There you go.
And you've never met Kanye, I assume?
I have not met Kanye as yet.
Oh.
No, not as yet.
Press the wrong button. Cool.
We'll see. And I'm in no rush. We'll see.
Okay. And what's another question? Oh yes, here's Georgie Harkin is saying, thanks to you and the band Ghost, I know 2 songs about getting off with goats. Anyway, why do you think music is important, and how does it affect different people? I'll just pop that up again in case anybody missed that one.
I mean, that's a question.
Yes, I mean, music is obviously important to you.
Yes, of course. It's it's a thing. I think there wasn't, my parents didn't really play music or anything like that. They weren't particularly artistic or musical. But for some reason, it was something that's always, ever since I was a little kid, there's lots of old photos of me every Christmas with whatever guitar I was about to smash to pieces.
Yeah.
That I'd been gifted. Yes, it's just something that, I don't know. I guess, I don't know if it separates us from the animals and that, because birdsong's rather nice.
Yeah.
Yep. But please carry on, because I don't really know what I'm talking about. So please butt in.
I was going to say, I was just going to have a look for another question. Actually, I'm just going to do one thing, because my technology is just playing up a little. So I'm just going.
Yes, there you go.
Yes, that's not good, is it? Hang on, let me.
You've got a large green planet behind you.
That should be you there. There we go. Right, let's go back
to
this one. So, how long have you played the trombone? This is from Nimrod Lancaster. How long have you played the trombone, and will it feature more in future?
Sadly, I think I've played the trombone for probably 8 or 9 years. When I say played the trombone, I really mean haven't played the trombone. I have, yes. It was something my wife bought me a trombone as a Christmas present, as a surprise, because I sort of saw someone playing one somewhere. I mean, I'd seen someone playing them before, but this particular person I liked the look of and thought, this could work. But then I've never really properly bothered to learn it. But perhaps while we're here, I think actually my trombone's in the studio, but I'm sure Lady C will be delighted if I go and fetch one of those and try and relearn it while we're in lockdown. We'll see how that goes.
Well, you could send us, full 3-hour videos of the practice sessions, couldn't you? That would be good.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm kind of like, I'm like the Rolling Stones of the trombone. I've, spent hundreds of years just to sound this bad.
Yes, yeah. That's probably me and my guitar as well. So Malika said, will playing the cup and saucer go on your CV? This is a reference, obviously, to Paper Plates, which is one of my favourite songs of yours.
Oh, thank you.
Especially live.
Yes, it does do the job live. There are certain ones that garner loads of hits on YouTube, and live don't quite work for some reason. But some things, I was kind of surprised. I gave it a little chance, and it's done the job. But yes, absolutely, playing the cup and saucer will go on my CV. Yes.
If you were on tour, how many cups and saucers do you go through? Because that's one of the things I noticed, is that they do tend to end up slightly worse to wear.
They do, yeah. Well, actually, you know what? I found when I played at a show at a place called the Straight and Narrow in Lincoln. Hello over there. And I borrowed a little cup and saucer off them. I think it was like almost like a cappuccino cup and saucer. Yeah. Which was handy because I always like small things because I don't like to carry too much around with me.
Yeah.
And that lasted a good year and a half or so. It was absolutely brilliant. It was bulletproof. Everything since then, a couple of taps, and you can always tell because you'll get the first few go ding ding, and the last time I did it was actually while we were filming the video, which I'll put up soon. Actually, a live version of Paper Plates I recorded at Bucks New University with some of their students a few weeks ago. So I've got a couple of videos of those to put up. But I noticed like halfway through recording that it was going ding, ding, ding. And then after it went kick. And you're like, okay, that's it. That's got a hairline fracture in that. That's it.
So it wasn't an homage to The Who or Jimi Hendrix or, breaking your instrument after you finished playing it.
Well, I did. You know
Keith
what?
Moon with the drums.
That very cup from the Straight and Narrow at the end of last year, I played a show at the Islington in London, and I ceremoniously Hendrix-like smashed it to bits. I was on my knees, chucking it down. And the thing took a while to break because it's, as I say, it's made of whatever it is. But yes, I smashed the thing up as a sort of ceremonial end of the Chap Hop decade thing. Obviously, the start of the next Chap Hop decade. But I thought, end of the year, end of the decade, let's smash up a cup.
So, Ian Crichton, who I'm sure you know, he's always slightly, slightly esoteric with his comments and questions. So his one is, did Russell like his tie? Now, I've got no idea what that refers to. So
He did like his tie. That refers to the one and only Russell Mail of Sparks, legendary, iconic Sparks keyboard player.
Right, yes.
Yes, when I was on tour, I did pluck up the courage to knock on their dressing room and present him with a ceremonial Mr. B Club tie. And he put it straight on, bless him, he put it straight on, took his tie off, put it straight on. And he said he would have worn it at the show, but they had they were wearing white and pink. So they had to have that on.
Yeah.
But he said he promised he'd wear it for the next tour. Whether he will, he's probably going to forget. But he does collect a lot of things. There's a fantastic video of him, funnily enough, that he put up a couple of weeks ago of him showing off because he collects Nike Air Jordans. And what else does he collect? A few other things. But he also collects hand sanitizers from around the world.
Well, that's handy.
Yes, he was showing his collection. And it's quite mesmerising, this video. Just showing his whole collection of little bottles of hand sanitizer from all over the world.
So what does he know that we don't? That's what I want to know.
I don't know quite. I mean, the man is a genius, so he's obviously prepared for the best and the worst.
Cool. So I got one of those ties, so I can say I can wear the same tie as Russell. That would be brilliant.
There you go. Absolutely.
So if anybody else has got any questions for Mr. B, we're taking questions at the moment. We got Ian again was asking, and this is a reference to, I think, to the kind of people who possibly unwanted fans. I'm not sure, because he's saying, how was Newsnight? And I was reading somewhere that at one point Mr. Gove said he liked your music, which was a bit worrying.
Yes. Well, I would like to qualify this slightly by saying he also mentioned the Prof and the Correspondence. Yeah. So it wasn't just me.
Okay.
I think I got singled out because of what the Daily Mail called, in the time in my brief infamy, called Tory baiting lyrics. As in, specifically referring to my song, They Don't Allow Rappers in the Bullingdon Club.
Yes. Yeah.
Which was disparaging about that particular government, which seems to have kind of come back in largely now.
Yeah.
But, Newsnight was interesting. So, yes, there was this whole... I think we were staying around... We'd done a show in London, and myself and Lady C were staying at my parents' house. And my mother suddenly burst into the bedroom and said, look at this, and showed me a newspaper with a picture of me in it, talking about how Mr. Michael Gove was apparently a fan. So that was an interesting way to be woken up. And then it was a couple of days later, I was just having a wander into Brighton, and I looked at my emails, and I got an email saying, just said, Newsnight invitation. I thought, oh, gosh, it's happening. So immediately it was on that very evening, so I had to dash up to London. My brother lives in South London, so I popped up to his. I had to edit Chap Hop History down to a minute long, and the taxi had already turned up to take me there, and I'm still editing the song. So I eventually sent that off to them. And yes, I arrived on set, and they had the big backdrop of the man himself in sort of photoshopped in rather cliched hip hop gear, and I thought, oh gosh, what have I done? What have I done? But then, I ended up getting. I was in makeup, sat next to Paxo, because it was when Jeremy Paxman was still doing it. We were having a chin wag. He asked me if I'd ever met Bill Clinton.
Yeah. Weird question.
And funny enough, I said, no, I haven't ever met Bill Clinton. But then there was a very peculiar moment, and I was quite kind of relaxed about the whole thing and thinking, oh, this will just be a laugh because I'm just going to play a bit of my song, and that's that. But then there was a moment when I stood in my little spot where they said, okay, we're ready for you to go. Stood on my spot. I think they were showing videos about a video report about Somalia, which was quite harrowing.
Yeah.
And then, 20 feet across from me, there was Paxman sat leaning back with his feet up, going, looking forward to this. And then suddenly everything seemed to just cave in. I was like, oh, God, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? This is a mistake. This is a mistake. And I went, go. Okay, let's do this. And that was that. It was my little minute.
Yes, like a professional, you rose to the occasion.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And I think afterwards in the green room, I was talking to the editor of the show, and he was saying about how Gove's never got the bottle to go on there.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm texting Gove to tell him you're here. That why are you never here? But he's come on here, and he got a text straight back apparently that just said, "This is terrible." He got a text straight back from Gove that said, "Can I have a signed photo?" When will this end?
You heard it here first.
There you go. Yes, that was that. Yes,
while we're talking about TV, Georgie Harkin says, you mentioned the other day your displeasure for Britain's Got Talent. Is there any TV or reality show that you would go on?
I'm sure I'd go on the Team Players Talent Parade or something like that. Is there any TV shows that I would go on?
Like Bake Off maybe, or
yeah, well, that would be perfectly pleasant, apart from the fact that I have no idea how to bake things. If there was a fry-off, I might be all right. A boil-off.
Yeah, I'd go for that. Yeah, I'd go for that. Yeah,
yeah, the Great British Boil-Off.
Yeah, Lady M will second that most of my food tends to end up fried.
Yeah, yes.
So
maybe that.
Yes.
Apart from that, no, there's not really. I do get the Britain's Got Talent email every year.
Yes, yeah.
It usually says TV opportunity or something like that, and it says, "Oh, I work for Thames Telly, and we're doing a show that we think you're going to be perfect for." And I email back and say, "Is it Britain's Got Talent?" And they go, "Yes." I'm fine, thank you. Just because I've no wish to be famous or anything like that, or not that sort of thing gets you famous anymore. It seems now it's just you end up with a lifetime of obscurity and poverty, basically.
Yeah,
and I know that I know some people that have done it, and the deals they try and cut you are shocking.
Yeah. It's like some kind of churning machine, isn't it? Speaking of which, Nimrod has said, "Have you been tempted to incorporate domestic appliances into your music?" That's an interesting question.
Oh yes. Always tempted. I'm sure there are some pots and pans somewhere in there. Well, obviously there are. I mean, it's not an appliance, but would you call cup and saucer an appliance? I'm not exactly sure. I guess it's an appliance. But what did it mean? Like a Morphy Richards whisk or something like that, perhaps.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Something.
Nothing's off limits. Anything could happen.
No. One thing I wanted to ask you about was basically your album covers and your photography, because this was, I can't remember, this is your last album as Mr. B, Dandinista.
Yes, Dandinista.
And this is basically one of my favourite album covers of all time. I just thought it was very iconic. Can you pose in the same direction? Can you just the other way?
Oh, that's the other direction.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yes. You seem to be having a shirt and tie. It seems to me, it seems to be a combination of Dandinista reminds me of The Clash, because who did an album famously, Sandinista, and that's a little bit Kraftwerk in some respects. So, how did that album cover come about? Who was the?
Well, I think it was. I mean, it's a little bit Kraftwerk, but it's also based on the famous Che Guevara poster.
Yes. Yeah.
So, well, I mean, that's the photo itself was just taken on my phone,
right?
And then, my wife, Lady C, does my design. I will art direct it to an extent, but she's the genius behind those, and she just could have said what I wanted, and she put the whole thing together. But I tend to be, I did when I first moved to Brighton. I had a little band called Rock Onic and Bob, which was my sort of Banjo Lady covers band. and we had an album out called That'll Do, because that was kind of my catchphrase from when we were doing rehearsals. So, which gives you some idea of the slightly slapdash nature of what I do. Whereas Caroline's very, she's precise, and she will make sure everything's as good as it can possibly be. So so the covers are always look great.
Yeah, they do. I mean, they're really brilliant. I mean, I used to work in the design industry, so I'm not just.
No, thank you.
That means anything, but anyway. And the other thing as well is.
Well, it was just butt in for a way. The irony of that, of course, being that my degree is in graphic design, yet I have no idea how to use it. And so, yeah, there you go. But I have an eye, perhaps.
Yes, I was trying to find.
Sorry, old chap, carry on.
It's all right. I was looking for. I think I've lost it now. Anyway, I was going to look for a couple of other photographic images. One of the things I've noticed is your other photography is great. There's an image of you, which I thought I had, but I can't find it now, with your foot out. It was quite brilliant, actually. See if I can. Which I thought was really good. And a lot of your photography in your albums and not just your albums, but for your press and everything else, is very good. And I just wondered who does your photography or how that comes about.
Well, of late, I tend to do them every couple of years or so.
Oh, hang on. There we go.
Have you got
there
it?
You go. Found it.
Yes, that's the Sheltoes or Brogues photo shoot, effectively, where I'm wearing both a Shelto and a Brogue.
Yes.
When it's the chap hop dilemma, what to wear. But yes, this is by a guy called Scott Chalmers, who does a lot of things for a lot of burlesque people and cabaret people, and he's just got a real eye for a sort of dramatic setup and backdrop. And he just, for this time, he said, "Look, I've got this red backdrop. I think we should use that because I'd wear lots of slightly earthy colours, you may say." Yeah. So he said the red would bring things out. Yeah, he's absolutely great. I'm hoping to do another one soonish because I'm developing a slightly, new look, but I don't know if I'll reveal, but it's a couple of people are making me a siren suit, which is the sort of Churchillian onesie.
Ooh.
So it's sort of pinstripe, almost a pinstripe onesie. Right. It should look rather marvellous when I eventually get them made.
I was going to say that sounds very odd, but if anybody can pull it off, I'm sure you can.
I'll give it a go anyway. Yes.
So, couple of questions come in. Guillaume, I'm sorry, Guillaume, if I've pronounced your name wrong. I'm hopeless with languages. But he said, do you have any songs about dinosaurs?
Do I have songs about dinosaurs?
Or are you planning any songs about dinosaurs? It's an odd question, but I quite like it.
I am now. I don't believe I do have any songs about dinosaurs, no, but that's not to say that there won't be any songs about dinosaurs. Cool. Obviously, most songs at the moment that I'm doing are little quick versions of things that are based around our current predicament.
Yeah. Yes, Paul Wilkes is saying, how are the new songs coming along?
They're coming on good. Well, I seem to have a group of... There's a two-pronged attack as far as these songs go at the moment, and that is there are a lot of quick-fire songs that I'm doing about the current predicament, and there are some slightly more elaborate songs that I'm doing which will form the official next album, I think, which actually when the last thing I did with any other human beings before lockdown was I went and got some cellos and violins and violas recorded for some songs for the new album. So there's going to be a few strings on there, which would be lovely. It's lovely to hear some real strings on stuff. Yeah. So yes, so that should be there'll be lots of sort of, not to say that what I do is throwaway, but there'll be a slightly more swiftly written, perhaps EP, or we'll see how many songs we get out of the current situation.
Yeah.
But I've already recorded a few. There's one called I've Got the Skills That Used to Pay the Bills. About how we can't play live gigs anymore, so therefore we're running out of money.
I did like the one about loo rolls. I like the one about loo rolls. Yes.
Which we won't go into the specifics.
These are available. They're out there.
Yes, indeed.
Which reminds me. So if now you have a number of different things you're involved with. Mr. B is but one of them. So what are the different things? Because I know we've mentioned the major. We've mentioned there's now you've also got Chapstep. Now is that the same as the major, or is that something different?
Well, no, that's more. I sometimes play some Chapstep songs at Mr. B, the Gentleman Rhymer gigs. It kind of as Mr. B. I call it Mr. B, the Gentleman Selector. But what I should do is change it back to Mr. B, the Gentleman Rhymer, because it turns out it seems nobody searches for Mr. B the Gentleman Selector on Spotify because my Mr. B the Gentleman Rhymer albums do perfectly fine on Spotify, whereas nobody listens to the Mr. Gentleman Selector ones. So, and also on the Bandcamp, there are the 2 Chapstep albums, Acid Ragtime, Chapstep Volume 1, and Old Jack Swing, Chapstep Volume 2. They're my sort of, because I have a lifetime love of dance music as well. So the Acid Ragtime is a sort of chappy acid house album, and Old Jack Swing is a sort of chappy version of UK Garage, or GB Garage, as you might. GB Garage.
Garage.
So yeah, they're more sort of dance music orientated version of what I do.
Yeah.
But there's also little animations I do and what have you.
Yes, they're quite fun. I do enjoy those. And yes. And then the major is kind of more experimental music, isn't it? It's more kind of electronic. You play with these little synthesizers, which always look fab.
Oh yes. There's lots of things like my little teenage engineering pocket operators, which are really good fun. Just absolutely brilliant. If you like, making any music that's maybe samply based, there's one called the PO33, which is a little sampler, and it's just brilliant. It's just such fun. There's so many little funny gadgets you can get that you can make a noise out of and just have a bit of a lark with.
Yeah.
They're fun.
Cool. So if people go to your if they go to your Bandcamp page, which I'm just popping up now on screen,
there it is.
So they can pick up your albums, and you've released a couple of re-released a couple of really old ones which have been unavailable, I believe.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I've taken the jump. Yeah, I basically realised that the Bandcamp page only had a few albums and EPs on it, so I thought, while this is all happening, I'll every day or two release an old album. So they're all there now. So going back to 2010's I Say, and before that, the original Flattery Not Included from 2008. And you can go back and see how the voice has slightly changed and what have you.
Yeah. And then,
but it's nice to have them back out there, because I do get a lot of people going, "Where can I get these? Where can I get these?"
And then probably the best place to follow what you're up to is your Facebook page, where I know you do post quite a lot. You're quite good at keeping in touch with people and making them, keeping up with what you're doing. So that's
yes, indeed. And I say, if you're going onto that Facebook page, do I think you have to follow it, don't you? Specifically follow it, because otherwise Facebook don't let anyone see anything, because unless they have me give them money.
Yes,
which is really nice of them, I find. Yes,
that's the way Facebook works.
Exactly. Yes. It's a shame, because Facebook is the one where I've sort of developed most. I've got the biggest following on there, and suddenly it's the one that no one sees anything.
Yeah. No.
But there you go. Hey, we're on Facebook now, so sorry everybody. Sorry, Mr. Zuckerberg. Everything will be fine.
It's precisely the reason. Really. It's precisely the reason why I started Steam Paper in the first place, was because people just weren't hearing about events. So my idea was, well, if you have a newsletter, you can't not get that. If you've signed up for it, you will get it. So because that's the way these things work, or should work. So that was the idea behind that. Was you didn't have to rely on Facebook and its dodgy algorithms, because people could organise an event and they put it out there and 20 people would see the post. So
anyway. Yeah, it's a real shame. Well, I've got a sort of big birthday coming up next Tuesday. I'm planning on doing a sort of Facebook Live DJ set, I think.
Awesome. What time is that?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Probably about 8 o'clock, I guess, something like that next week.
Yeah.
And it'll be, it's not going to be strictly chappy or steampunk. It'll be all over the shop, because I'm just going to keep doing it for as long until I get tired or too drunk. If I can find any beer that will deliver.
We're coming up for almost an hour now, actually. So I'm going to ask you. I'm going to have one more question, I think, and it's going to be this one from Alan Price, which is, what's your favourite cheese, and what cracker would you have with that cheese?
Oh, my favourite cheese. Well, I'll have to lean in a bit here. I'm actually. I'm quite almost glad you've asked me this, because. It's been about 3 or 4 weeks now that I've not been able to say to any people I don't know that I'm vegan. So yes, but I know there are some great. I know at your very birthday party, I think there was some tremendous soft vegan cheese.
Yes, yeah.
The vegan cheese, which tries to be cheddar, is almost all dreadful and not to be touched, really. But there's some lovely vegan soft cheeses. There was the tined one that I can't remember.
I don't know. We'll have to refer to Lady M because she organised that, so we'll have to find out what they were. But yes, no. If I can find out.
I'm very sad to. It's only been it's been a couple of years, but yeah.
I'll put it in the comments.
I'm one of them.
And what crackers would you have though? What's your favourite cracker?
What crackers? Oh, we've got these. God, who are they made by? They're not even McVitie's. There's these salt and pepper crackers which are rather lovely.
Yes,
they're very nice.
Cool.
They always just bring out the flavour in whatever you have.
Yeah, cool.
So they're good. Like them. Awesome. But anything, all crackers are good. A Jacobs does the job.
I always find it's important to get the cheese cracker balance right because it's one of these things like light and dark, good and evil. You sometimes have too much cheese in the house and not enough crackers, and then you've got loads of crackers and not enough cheese, and it's just getting that balance right is really important.
And also getting the balance when you actually have the thing itself, because you don't want to be too dry, but you don't want to be too claggy either. So you have that little balance between the claggy cheese and the nice dry cracker.
Well, on that,
the devil's in the detail with everything. We're learning this all the more.
Yes. Well, on that note, which is incredibly important to all your fans, I'm sure.
Very important.
It's been lovely to talk to you, lovely to chat to you, Mr. B. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you on Facebook doing various things, and you've been popping up with diaries and stuff. And also, obviously, you've got more music coming out, which is brilliant. So I should definitely be following that and watching that. But for now, thank you very much, Mr. B. Thank you. It's been, like I say, a huge pleasure for me, and I've enjoyed it greatly. Always nice to chat to you.
Likewise. Good to see you too, sir.
All right. So take care of yourself, and see you again soon.
Cheerio, pip, pip, tickety tonk.
So that was the wonderful Mr. B. It's always a pleasure to chat to him. I've been fortunate to have a conversation with the man a few times. So do check him out. Do check out his Facebook page, and also go to Bandcamp. You can trial his albums there. You can buy his albums there. They're all really good. If you haven't come across him before and you're a steampunk, where have you been? If you're into the Chat magazine and so on, I'm sure you know him already. But if you haven't, then again, you should check him out definitely. Wonderful man, wonderful music. So that's all from me. I'm going to wrap up, but don't forget Steampunk Over Ether. We're looking for videos and all sorts of things. Got some more interviews coming up this week. I'm going to be talking to the lovely Scarlet Butterfly tomorrow night at 7. Again, if you haven't come across her, she's a lovely lady, and we'll be talking to her. And then next week we've got some more lined up. I won't tell you now, but they're going to be good. They're going to be good. So do join us again. So thank you very much for watching, and see you again soon. Stay safe and stay splendid.